Hi, this is Amanda,
And this is Jen.
and you're listening to Just This, a podcast that explores everything around being and becoming a mother or parent.
We're excited to have you join us as we dive into the practical details as well as the unseen energetics on topics that span from preconception to years after birth. All right, we're here. Like really passionate about this right now. Sometimes I get fired up, but our topic today is about breast milk and formula. And I'm not going to go into the supplement portions of things, but
I think you
there's
should because I don't even know what you mean when you say supplement.
well, okay, so other supplements are goat's milk. Some people believe that they should supplement with something like goat's milk. I've actually been asked that. Is that a safe supplement as opposed to formula? And then also sometimes supplementation in the sense of other people's breast milk, donor milk is what they call it.
Yeah.
And that could come from a hospital that's typically pasteurized or from a friend or another mother that you don't even know that someone has connected you with. So that
Supplementing
type
with,
of
I mean, I've heard the donor milk. I've never heard the ghost milk though. It's interesting. So okay.
Okay,
Anyway,
so the main thing
formula.
I want to get here is I feel there's this huge pressure, and we've talked about it before, this huge pressure around breastfeeding, like keeping things natural. And I believe in our society, we have such a negative concept about formula that we really don't appreciate it for what it is. And I think a part of that is because our generation of moms ish, we'll just say ish it in the generational field there, we were more brought up into the formula type setting, right? Where we just breastfeeding was there, but it was just not maybe as appropriate. And again, this is like a generalization. Not everybody was formula fed, but very big generation. Formula was at that time considered kind of a gold standard, right? And I feel like now in our generation, we see formula is more of a negative thing as opposed to what we should see formula as, which is a form of food and nutrient for our child when we can't necessarily breastfeed or when we're not producing enough milk, whatever. Like there's some medical reasons that happen that we need to either supplement or just give them pure formula. And I just really, I guess my whole point of this is to really just to remind moms out there and maybe even partners, dads, and everybody, however you identify, really let go of this concept of getting ruined because we're giving our child formula. Does that make sense?
I think what I am hearing and what comes up around this topic. So I have people that I know that have had every kind of emotional response to this. I don't think anyone out there these days would argue that saying breast is best. Like we all know your breast milk is best, right? I think what comes up around this is the perfection part. And it's almost like swinging so far. You mentioned in the last era of parenting that formula was more widely used. It was like this great new invention. Why breastfeed when we didn't have to? And now there's a swing to kind of go back to natural and also embrace the feminine, which I think is beautiful. And I'm really happy that we're doing that. But again, you don't want to be too far to the left and you don't want to be too far to the right. Where's your happy medium? And what we need to do is embrace like anything like technology, anything in our study, we like embrace it and use it as a tool, as something that you can that can actually help you versus be a replacement, right? It's not none of this stuff is meant to replace you. It's meant to support you in whatever way you need. And that can look different. Maybe you do have some condition like breast cancer or something else where you can't breastfeed. And so, isn't it great we have the technology out there to help us do that? Maybe your baby is small, like my baby was small, and the supplementing, as you like to call it, I needed additional donor milk. Or I saw a friend post about this on National Breastfeeding Day, I think, of just how hard breastfeeding really is. And we live in a society, yeah, it's great to swing back to the natural ways, but guess what? We don't live in a society where it's honored to breastfeed your child all day, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I don't know. But it's just our society is not set up to support that. And for a multitude of reasons, it's nice to have the formula there when you need it. Even if you need to use it occasionally. I mean, I work with so many families, and there are some people who are really stickler about breast milk only. And then there's some people who are like, you know what, here and there, let's throw in some formula. And I can say, like, if it's stressing you out, then it's not aiding anyone in the process.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I want to bring up an example, diapers. Let's bring this comparatively to EC, right? Because we're both
Yeah.
EC coaches, elimination communication, another episode we have out there if you want to visit that. Do we think of diapers as a horrible thing?
Right.
Diapers and formula kind of came around to be around the same time, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
It was like roughly the same time. We have this swing back toward natural breastfeeding. And again, I think this is wonderful and great because there's so many benefits to everyone involved with breastfeeding. And lesser known, there's a swing back to how babies used to be pottied from birth. And in many cultures, that's still done, right? Like that's in that episode. But you don't see us, most of the people, at least in the United States or in the Western world that I see, aren't doing infant pottying. And do we think that's horrible? Do we think it's horrible that people are putting babies in diapers all the time and raising them for 3 years this way? I don't know. I wouldn't say it's horrible. But here, like, it's when we're approaching EC, we also don't expect it's like, okay, we're trying to learn from the natural indigenous ways people did things, the cultures that brought this, because it wasn't our invention. Like, we didn't invent this. We're trying to honor and go back to some like natural historical ways. But we also are acknowledging we live in a world where we can't just have our babies out of diapers all the time. Like, that's not practical, right?
And on the breastfeeding side of that, we're not in a culture. I mean, sure, we can breastfeed, but also, like, if you're going back to work at 6 weeks or 8 weeks, you're not bringing that baby with you. That baby's not around you. And granted, you can pump, but pumping does not release the oxytocin levels like you would if you had your baby attached to you right there, smelling and all that other stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So there's just a million and two things. I mean, I know people have the privilege of having 6 months off of work or more, which if you can do it, again, other countries, you get way longer than that. But anyway,
if you can and you want to.
If you can and you want to, yes, of course. Even if you aren't going back to work, like, I have people I have spoken to that are just like so grateful to have formula as a backup. And I think what we need to remember, and it's very hard, especially with first children, we think every little thing we do is going to make this huge, huge impact. And it's more of, on the bigger picture, you're choosing to breastfeed your child, or on the bigger picture, you can't breastfeed. And so you're bottle feeding, and whatever thing you choose, it's really about our intention. I've said this on other podcasts, our intention and our love. And and if you put like intention into how you're bottle feeding your child or how you're supplementing it, then that's all that matters. There's so many different combinations and things out there. I have friends who are gay couples who have children. I mean, they're not breastfeeding. Those children are totally fine. Like, they're great. And those children are loved. There's a lot of intention put into it. And really, that's what I see at the core. If you're stressing yourself out, that kid is going to feel that more, that have that effect more than the effect of not having that bottle feed once or twice or whatever it is, even more than that. So
Right. I think playing off of, I'm hearing what you're saying, more of this whole kind of perfectionism where breast is best, quote unquote, like type theory, which it is the best in the sense that it has immune boosting abilities, that it has nutrients. I mean, it's pretty incredible thing. But at the same time, one of the big new kind of sayings that I've heard a little bit in the birth world is fed is best. And I think that's really what I'm saying, is that we want a baby that is healthy and happy, and a mom that is healthy and happy. And it's interesting because you're talking about intention, how we feed our baby, even if it is, say, formula. And in our minds, we're like, this is not the best for them, but it is good for them. It is the best for them at this point in their life, at this situation, because it's feeding them, it's helping them to gain weight, it's maybe helping me be less stressed. And I just think it's interesting because one of the things, especially when I'm working with for weight loss, is people feel bad about what they eat. I always tell them, I said, if you want to eat something that you consider bad, eat it with intention and enjoy it to the fullest. So if you're bottle feeding your baby and you feel bad about giving them formula, just sit there and think about how great it is that you're able to feed your baby and all the love that's going to go into there and the nutrients and how smart they're going to be because you give them love or whatever you need to say to do it. I really like that aspect of it. And
I think we should come up with a new saying, fed with love.
Fed with, oh, I love it.
Fed
Yes.
with love.
Yes.
And it's so fascinating, always bringing in the energetics. There is that study of the water.
Yeah.
Study where they say they put the positive intentions into the one water, and then the other one they say negative things to the water, not nice things.
Yeah.
And you actually see the molecules of the water. They did a science study. So I'll link that study in the show notes because you want to send that little bottle of formula or supplemental nutrients, whatever love, like really infuse it with love and consider it even more so sometimes because breastfeeding can become just such a monotonous chore for us. Let's be realistic that, especially if it's an occasional thing you're doing with a bottle of formula, maybe that's like becomes a little ritual and you almost like put a little bit more intention into that than you do breastfeeding.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, just find ways to also, I think, look at it's hard when you're in it, but to zoom out.
Yeah.
And I think we brought this up. I want to say we touched on all of this on another podcast, maybe the breastfeeding one that we did, which we'll link to that one as well. If you can actually identify other people in your life that you really love, ask them, were you breastfed the entire time?
Yeah.
It's kind of a weird exercise, but I think what we don't realize is look at all these people in our lives that are really incredible people. They're incredible parents. They're doing amazing things. If you are in a position where you're feeling guilty for whatever reason about not being able to breastfeed or give breast milk to your child, try to find other moms in your mom circles, your close mom circles. We've talked about this too, just making sure if you're going into big groups, making statements like this, hey, is there any other moms out there fully supplementing or using formula all the time? And you're gonna find people. You can find people in some closer groups. Maybe there's like WhatsApp groups or smaller groups that aren't thousands of people. It's better. You're gonna have people raise their hand. I had somebody recently, a client who was in an interesting situation and didn't know anyone. And I put it out there. I was like, who else is in this situation? And so many people came out of the woodwork because there's not a group set aside for this kind of situation. And but they were like, hey, I'm in a similar situation. I would love to connect. It's just there are going to be people out there. You can use one of those two tools, but I think zooming out to the bigger picture and then also just reminding yourself it's going to be okay. People turn out just fine when they have to do things maybe that their parents didn't want to do. Talk about being a parent. We're gonna screw our children up. We're not gonna make the best decisions. But you know what? You make the best decision in a moment. I always tell people, trust your intuition. You know what's gonna work for you. And whether it's because you're physically unable to, whether it's because you're tired and you need just a break, whether it's because it's stressing you out to pump so much and you're going back to work, whatever the situation is, really tap into your heart and be like, what do I need right now? Like, what do I need? Not like, what does this baby need? Because the baby's going to be okay. Like, because if you check in with yourself, honestly, you're going to give your baby the best thing by giving yourself the best thing.
Yeah. And also on the note, I want to say, as you were talking and asking if you were breastfed, it's so interesting because I actually recall my mom saying at one point she was breastfeeding me. And then this is very old thinking, but basically the doctor told her that I was allergic to her milk, which is like a very common thing to be told back then and still gets told nowadays. And so I ended up being put on a soy-based formula. And I don't know, I think I turned out okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of back then. I think my mom was told after 3 days because her milk wasn't flowing that she wasn't going to be able to breastfeed, like the milk would never come in. Granted, my mom also went like right back to work. Like it was
so you were formula fed.
Yeah, I was formula fed. Yeah.
See? And I think that's the thing too. I think when we get in those moments, we forget how much it is actually so normalized because in our brains we just think it's not the best or whatever the case is. Yeah. And I also want to bring up too,
we want the best for our babies. And that's that's to be honest, like that's what happens. We want the best for our babies and we want to do the best. And it can be easy to get in a tunnel versus zooming out on the bigger picture.
Right.
And it's easy to do. You're so in the moment.
So in the moment,
with your baby in those first years, like everything is like in the moment. So it's very hard to see or feel that there is a bigger expanse to this, because you're like, when is it going to be next week? When is it going to be tomorrow? Like, when's the next part? So.
Well, and it's interesting you say that too, because if you think about it, even fully breastfed babies generally are only really breastfed up to a year. So even if we say that same trajectory with formula fed, we're only technically 1 year of their entire life. So you still have, even if it's the whole 7-year thing of their informative years, you still have 6+ years to go, and you could really nutriently build them up, or whatever the case is. So yeah. And I think the other thing I just want to mention is, if this comes up and you do have to formula feed your baby, or it's being recommended to you because we both believe in choice, then just really take a moment and ask ourselves, like, what is it that I believe formula is? Like, what beliefs am I holding on to that give it a negative light, as opposed to seeing it for, like you said, for what it is, and like really stepping back and utilizing it as a tool, as opposed to just basically checking your beliefs. Is formula really that bad? No, it's not. It's actually very healthy, and it's okay. It's going to be, like you said, it's going to be okay.
Tons of babies, they live and they thrive off of formula.
Yeah.
So yeah. Cool. Well,
that was exciting topic. So our new thing is not breast is best, fed with love.
Yeah, fed with love, I think.
Helps spread that mantra.
Hashtag fed with love. And feed yourself with love too. Feed yourself with love, feed your baby with love.
Hey there, amazing listeners. We just want to say a huge thank you for tuning into our convo on the Just This podcast today. We appreciate each and every one of our listeners, and your continued support means the world to us.
If you enjoyed this episode and found value in it, we would be incredibly grateful if you could take a moment to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform, or share this episode with someone you think would enjoy it too. Your reviews and shares not only motivate us, but they also help others discover our show.
We're also all about keeping the conversation going and hanging out with our incredible community. Head over to justthis.site, that's justhis.site, where you'll find additional resources, ways to connect with us, and join the conversation, plus some more goodies.
Thank you again for being a part of the Just This community. We'll be back soon. Until next time, remember to take care of yourself and embrace the wonder as you navigate this extraordinary adventure.